The dust from the stagecoach had barely settled when Clara Whitmore stepped onto the wooden planks of Prescott, Arizona Territory, in the spring of 1882. Her traveling dress stained with red desert dirt, and her green eyes blazing with a determination that made grown men step aside. She had not traveled 1,500 miles from Philadelphia to become someone's delicate wife, trapped in a parlor serving tea while her dreams withered like wildflowers in drought. No, Clara had come west with every cent of her inheritance sewn into the lining of her trunk, ready to claim what the government promised any citizen brave enough to file for it: 160 acres of raw, untamed land under the Homestead Act. The land office smelled of tobacco and old paper, and the clerk behind the counter looked up from his ledger with watery eyes that widened when he saw her. "Help you, miss." "I am here to file a homestead claim," Clara said, setting her carpetbag down with a decisive thump. "I have the filing fee and I know the requirements. 5 years of continuous residence, cultivation of the land, and construction of a dwelling. I am prepared to meet all conditions." The clerk scratched his balding head. "Well now, that is unusual. Most ladies come out here looking for husbands, not quarter sections." "Then most ladies have different priorities than I do," Clara replied coolly. "Do you have maps of available parcels?" While the clerk shuffled through his documents with maddening slowness, the door opened behind her, bringing with it the jingle of spurs and the scent of leather and sage. Clara did not turn around, too focused on the map the clerk finally spread before her, but she felt the presence of whoever had entered like heat from a forge. "Morning, Jack," the clerk said, his tone notably more respectful. "Be with you in just a moment." "Take your time, Howard," a deep voice answered, warm as whiskey and smooth as worn saddle leather. "I am in no hurry." Clara traced her finger along the map, studying the sections marked as available. Her heart quickened when she found it, a perfect parcel along Granite Creek with water access and timber for building. "This one," she said, pointing. "Section 19, Township 12 North." Howard's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "That is rough country, miss, rocky soil, and you would be a good 10 miles from town, mighty isolated for a woman alone." "Then I will have privacy while I work," Clara said. "Is it available or not?" "It is available, but I would not be doing my Christian duty if I did not warn you that homesteading is hard work even for experienced farmers. A refined lady like yourself. I am neither as refined nor as incapable as you assume." Clara pulled a leather pouch from her bag and counted out the filing fee in silver dollars, each coin clicking against the counter like a period at the end of a sentence. "I can read, write, cipher, and I am not afraid of hard work. Now, shall we complete this transaction, or must I travel to the territorial capital to find someone willing to take a woman's money?" The man behind her made a sound that might have been a suppressed chuckle. Clara still did not turn around, but she felt his attention on her like sunlight through a window. Howard sighed and began filling out the necessary forms. "I will need your full name, age, and place of origin." "Clara Louise Whitmore, 23 years old, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania." As Howard scratched away with his pen, Clara finally allowed herself a glance over her shoulder. The man leaning against the wall with his arms crossed was perhaps 27 or 28, tall and lean with the kind of strength that came from useful work rather than leisure. His hair was dark brown, almost black, and long enough to brush his collar. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray-blue, like storm clouds over mountains, and they were fixed on her with unconcealed interest. He wore dusty range clothes, a red bandana at his throat, and a gun belt that sat on his hips with the ease of long familiarity. He touched 2 fingers to the brim of his hat when their eyes met. "Ma'am." Clara nodded curtly and turned back to the counter, annoyed to feel heat in her cheeks. She had not come west to be distracted by handsome cowboys, no matter how unsettling their gaze. Howard finished the paperwork and slid it across for her signature. You will need to establish residence within 6 months and begin improvements within the first year. If you abandon the claim for more than 6 months at any time during the 5 years, you will forfeit it. I understand. Clara signed her name with a flourish, her heart soaring. It was real now, official. She owned land or would in 5 years. She was no man's dependent, no father's burden, no potential husband's property. She was Clara Whitmore, landowner. You will need supplies, Howard said, not unkindly. Timber, tools, seed, livestock. Do you have capital beyond the filing fee? I do. Clara folded her copy of the claim certificate and tucked it carefully into her bag. Where would you recommend I make purchases? Jacobson's Mercantile for most goods. For livestock and heavy equipment, the stockyard at the north end of town. For lumber, you will want the sawmill, but, Howard hesitated. Miss Whitmore, I truly must caution you. Building a homestead alone is dangerous. There are still conflicts with Apache raiding parties in some areas, not to mention claim jumpers, wild animals, and simple accidents. One broken leg out there, and no one would find you until it was too late. Then I will endeavor not to break my leg, Clara said. She turned to leave and nearly collided with the cowboy, who had moved closer to the counter. Pardon me, he said, stepping aside, but not before she caught the scent of him, surprisingly clean like cedar and fresh air. But Howard is right. That section you claimed backs up against some of the roughest country in the territory. Beautiful, but unforgiving. I did not ask for your opinion, Clara said, more sharply than she intended, defensive because part of her was terrified and his concern threatened to crack her resolve. No, you did not, he agreed, unfazed, but I am giving it anyway. I have a ranch about 5 miles east of that section, the Double J. If you are set on proving up that claim, you are going to need help at least at the start. I can manage on my own. Can you build a cabin, dig a well, break a horse? Clara lifted her chin. I can learn. Those storm-cloud eyes studied her for a long moment, and then he smiled, slow and genuine. I believe you could at that. But learning by trial and error when winter is coming, and you have no roof over your head is a hard way to go about it. I have men who know the work. We could help you raise a cabin, get you started right. And what would you expect in return? Clara asked, suspicion sharpening her voice. She had not escaped the marriage-minded men of Philadelphia society, only to find herself indebted to a Western rancher with the same expectations. His smile faded. Nothing you are not willing to give, Miss Whitmore. Out here, neighbors help neighbors. That is how people survive. You help me with branding next month, or share your garden vegetables come summer, or doctor one of my men if he takes sick and you have the skill. That is how it works. Clara wanted to maintain her wall of ice, but something in his straightforward manner disarmed her. Why would you help a stranger? Because I remember what it was like to start with nothing but hope and stubbornness, he said quietly. And because anyone with the grit to claim that particular section of rocks and rattlesnakes deserves a fighting chance. Besides, my mother would haunt me from her grave if I let a lady struggle alone when I could have helped. Despite herself, Clara felt her mouth twitch toward a smile. What is your name? Jack Donovan. He held out his hand, and after a moment Clara took it. His grip was firm and calloused, his hand swallowing hers. And before you ask, I am not looking for a wife. I was married once. She died 3 years back in childbirth, along with our son. I am not eager to walk that road again. The blunt honesty of it struck Clara silent for a moment. I am sorry for your loss, she said finally, and meant it. Then, because his candor deserved her own, she added, and I am not looking for a husband. I came here for land, for independence, for a life I can build with my own hands. Marriage would only complicate that. Jack nodded slowly. Then it seems we understand each other. Can we agree to be neighbors and nothing more? We can, Clara said, relieved and oddly just a little disappointed, though she would never have admitted it. Good. When are you planning to head out to your claim? As soon as I have purchased the necessary supplies. Tomorrow, if possible. Jack whistled low. You do not waste time. Do you have a wagon, a horse? Not yet. Then let us start there. Come on, I will take you to the stockyard. Pete Gonzalez runs it, and he will deal straight with you, but it helps to have someone along who knows horses. He pushed off from the wall and headed for the door, assuming she would follow. Clara hesitated, her independent spirit bristling at taking help from anyone, especially a man. But practical reality overruled pride. She did not know good horseflesh from poor, and she could not afford to be cheated. Swallowing her reluctance, she followed Jack Donovan out into the bright Arizona sunshine. The stockyard sprawled across several acres, corrals filled with horses, mules, and cattle. The smell of animals and hay was thick in the air, and dust rose in golden clouds wherever hooves struck the ground. Jack led her to a small office where a stocky man with silver-streaked black hair looked up from a desk, covered in bills of sale. Jack Donovan, as I live and breathe, the man said, rising with a broad smile. What brings you to town? Hello, Pete. I am here to help this lady find some good stock. Miss Clara Whitmore, meet Pete Gonzalez. He sold me my first breeding pair of cattle 8 years ago, and they are still producing. Pete shook Clara's hand with courtly grace. A pleasure, Miss Whitmore. What are you looking for? A sturdy horse or mule to pull a wagon, which I also need. And perhaps a milk cow, chickens, and a dog if you have one suitable for homestead protection. Clara had made lists during the long stagecoach ride, planning every detail. Pete's eyebrows rose. Homesteading? Well, we do not see many ladies taking up claims. Good for you. Let me show you what I have. Over the next 2 hours, Pete and Jack guided Clara through her purchases. Jack had an easy way with the animals, running his hands over legs and checking teeth, talking to her all the while about what to look for, what to avoid. He rejected 3 horses before approving a sturdy bay mare named Juniper, calm-tempered and willing. The wagon Pete offered was used but sound, and Clara felt a surge of satisfaction as she counted out the money to purchase it. The cow was a gentle Jersey with soft brown eyes, and the chickens clucked indignantly as they were crated. The dog, a young border collie mix, took to Clara immediately, pressing against her leg with devoted enthusiasm. That one was born on a homestead up north, Pete said, scratching the dog's ears. Family had to abandon their claim after the father passed. She knows how to work and she will alert you to anything unusual. Smart as a whip, too. She is perfect, Clara said, kneeling to let the dog lick her face. What is her name? They called her Scout. Scout, Clara repeated, and the dog's tail whipped faster. Yes, that suits you. By the time they finished at the stockyard, the sun was lowering toward the western mountains, painting the sky shades of orange and pink. Jack helped Clara drive her new wagon to the livery where she had arranged to leave everything overnight, showing her how to properly harness Juniper and how to handle the reins. His hands guided hers, his voice patient as he explained the techniques, and Clara found herself grateful despite her determination to need no one. You will also need lumber, tools, seed, household goods, Jack said as they walked back toward the center of town, Scout trotting at Clara's heels. That will take another full day at least. Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? The boarding house near the stage depot, Mrs. Chen's place. Good choice. She is an excellent cook. Jack paused at a corner where their paths would diverge. The street was busy with evening traffic, cowboys heading to saloons, families finishing shopping, a piano tinkling from somewhere nearby. I need to stay in town tonight anyway to pick up some supplies for the ranch. I could meet you at Jacobson's Mercantile tomorrow morning, help you get what you need. Unless you would rather manage alone, which I would understand. Clara looked at him, this unexpected cowboy with his sad history and generous spirit. Pride warred with pragmatism, and pragmatism won. I would appreciate that, she said. Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Jack, he corrected. We are neighbors, remember? Jack, she agreed, and you may call me Clara. His smile was like sunrise, slow and warm and illuminating. I will see you tomorrow morning then, Clara. 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, she confirmed. She watched him walk away, his long stride easy and confident, several men calling greetings as he passed. Clearly, Jack Donovan was well known and respected in Prescott. Clara shook her head at herself, forcing her attention back to practical matters. She had too much to do to be distracted by a man, even one as intriguing as her new neighbor. Mrs. Chen's boarding house was tidy and welcoming, and Clara ate her first good meal in days, savoring the roasted chicken and fresh vegetables. The other boarders were curious about her, but Mrs. Chen, a tiny Chinese woman with iron in her spine and kindness in her eyes, deflected the nosier questions with expert ease. You need good rest, Mrs. Chen told Clara, showing her to a small but clean room. Tomorrow you work hard, yes, sleep now. Clara did sleep, deeply and dreamlessly, exhausted from travel and excitement and the staggering reality of what she had set in motion. When she woke to pre-dawn light filtering through thin curtains, she felt renewed, ready to face whatever came next. Jack was waiting outside Jacobson's Mercantile when she arrived, leaning against a post with 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered her one with a smile. Figured you could use this. I could, Clara admitted, accepting the cup gratefully. The coffee was strong and hot, exactly what she needed. Thank you. They spent the morning selecting supplies. Clara had her lists, but Jack's practical experience filled in gaps she had not known existed. He suggested a particular kind of axe, a specific grade of rope, seeds that would grow well in the rocky soil of her claim. He showed her how to test the weight and balance of tools, how to judge quality. Mr. Jacobson, the mercantile owner, clearly respected Jack's opinion and gave Clara fair prices without the condescension she had feared. The pile of goods grew. A cast iron stove, pots and pans, blankets, a kerosene lamp, nails, window glass, seed packets, a rifle with ammunition, a medical kit, flour, salt, sugar, coffee, dried beans. Clara's inheritance was substantial, carefully saved by her late mother and held in trust until Clara's 21st birthday, but even so, she winced at how quickly the costs added up. This was only the beginning. She would need every penny to survive the first year. You know how to shoot? Jack asked, nodding at the rifle. My uncle taught me to shoot skeet, Clara said. I assume the principle is similar. Similar enough. I can give you some practice with targets before you head out to your claim if you like. A gun is only useful if you can hit what you aim at. That would be wise, Clara agreed, swallowing her pride. She had not fired a gun in years and certainly never at anything that might shoot back. By afternoon, they had everything loaded into her wagon, the bed piled high and covered with canvas. Jack had his own supplies to collect, but he met her back at the livery as the sun started to dip. I have been thinking, he said, checking the knots on her canvas covering. Your claim is on my way home. Why do not you follow me out there? I can show you the boundaries, help you pick a good site for your cabin, then I will head on to my ranch. You can camp tonight and start work in the morning. Camp. Clara had not thought that far ahead foolishly. Of course she would have to camp, she had no cabin yet. You do have a tent in all this, right? Jack looked at her face and sighed. You do not have a tent. I will purchase one now, Clara said, mortified by her oversight. Jacobson's will be closed by the time we get back, and you do not want to spend another night's rent at the boarding house when you can be on your land." Jack rubbed the back of his neck, thinking. "All right. New plan. You come out to the Double J tonight. We have a spare room you can use. Tomorrow morning, we will get you properly set up with a camp, and some of my men can start helping with your cabin." Before you argue, he held up a hand as Clara opened her mouth, "this is purely practical. You cannot homestead without shelter, even temporary shelter. Let us do this right." Every instinct Clara had screamed against accepting such generosity, against being obligated, against spending time in close quarters with a man who made her uncomfortably aware of him. But the alternative was returning to the boarding house, spending more money, losing another day. And Jack had been nothing but respectful, his offer clearly genuine. "One night," she said firmly. "And tomorrow I establish my camp and begin work." "One night," Jack agreed. "Now let us get moving before we lose the light." The ride out of Prescott took them northeast, following a wagon road that gradually narrowed to a dirt track. The landscape was breathtaking, nothing like the green hills of Pennsylvania. Here, the earth was red and gold, studded with juniper and pinyon pine, broken by dramatic rock formations and distant purple mountains. The air smelled of sage and sun-warmed stone. Clara's heart expanded with each mile, falling in love with this wild, harsh country. Jack rode a tall buckskin gelding named Sam, moving with the unconscious grace of someone born to the saddle. He pointed out landmarks, told her the names of plants and birds, shared the history of the area. He made easy conversation, asking about her life in Philadelphia, her family, what had drawn her west. "My mother died 2 years ago," Clara found herself telling him as they followed a creek lined with cottonwoods. "My father had passed when I was 16. I had no siblings, no close family except an uncle who made it clear. He considered me a burden. He wanted me to marry his business partner, a man 30 years my senior with 2 grown children and a reputation for cruelty to his servants. When I refused, my uncle threatened to cut me off, not realizing my mother's money was mine by law." She paused, remembering the confrontation. "I left Philadelphia the next day." "That took courage," Jack said quietly, "or desperation." Clara adjusted her grip on the reins, Juniper plodding steadily along. "I wanted a life I chose, not one assigned to me." "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Jack said. "That is why I came west, too. I was supposed to inherit my father's bank in Chicago where suits count money, marry the right kind of girl. But I felt like I was suffocating. When I turned 20, I left. Broke my father's heart, I am sure, but I could not be who he wanted me to be." Clara looked at him with new eyes, understanding now the education in his speech, the unexpected refinement beneath the cowboy exterior. "Do you regret it?" "Not once," Jack said firmly. "Even with all I have lost, I would rather have had 3 years with Anna in this country doing work I love than a lifetime in Chicago doing work I hated. Life is too short for regret." They rode in companionable silence after that, and Clara pondered his words. Life is too short for regret. She would not regret this choice, she vowed. Whatever hardships came, she had chosen this path, and that made all the difference. As the sun touched the horizon, Jack pointed ahead. There, the Double J. Clara had expected something rough, perhaps a simple cabin and some corrals. Instead, she saw a substantial ranch house built of local stone and timber, with a wide porch and glass windows. A large barn stood nearby, along with several outbuildings, corrals filled with cattle and horses. Everything was well maintained, speaking of care and prosperity. Smoke rose from the ranch house chimney, and as they approached, 2 men emerged from the barn, waving greetings. "Boss is back," one called, a young man with red hair and a wide smile. "And he brought company," Jack made introductions. The redhead was Tommy O'Brien, barely 20 and enthusiastic as a puppy. The other man was Miguel Santos, foreman, nearly 40 with a weathered face and shrewd, kind eyes. Both men tipped their hats to Clara with respect, and neither showed surprise at her presence, though she knew they must be curious. Miss Whitmore has claimed the section along Granite Creek, up against the high country, Jack told them as they helped unhitch Juniper and unload the wagon. She will be our neighbor. I told her we could help get her started if you men are willing. Of course, Miguel said immediately. We can spare 3 or 4 days, I think. The cattle are settled and the spring work is caught up. I would be glad to help too, Miss Whitmore, Tommy added eagerly. I am pretty good with a hammer. I appreciate that very much, Clara said, touched by their ready acceptance. And please call me Clara. The inside of the ranch house was as surprising as the outside, comfortable and clean with well-made furniture and Navajo rugs on the floors. Jack showed Clara to a bedroom that was clearly meant for guests, with a real bed and a quilt that must have taken months to stitch. This was Anna's room before we married, Jack said from the doorway. She made that quilt. I should probably put it away, but I never could bring myself to do it. I hope you do not mind. It is beautiful, Clara said honestly, running her fingers over the intricate star pattern. Thank you for letting me stay here. You are welcome. Jack lingered a moment, then seemed to shake himself. Supper will be ready soon. Miguel's wife, Rosa, does the cooking. She is the real boss around here. Rosa Santos proved to be a round, cheerful woman who made Clara feel immediately welcome, chattering happily while she served up plates of enchiladas that made Clara's eyes water and her taste buds sing. Around the big kitchen table, Clara relaxed in a way she had not expected, listening to the easy banter between Jack and his men, the teasing and laughter. This was a family of choice, she realized, and the bond between them was genuine. After supper, Jack took her outside to practice with the rifle in the fading light. He set up bottles on fence posts and stood behind her, adjusting her stance, her grip, his hands impersonal but warm through the fabric of her dress. Breathe out slowly and squeeze the trigger, do not jerk it, he instructed. And do not close your eyes. Clara fired, and the bottle exploded in a satisfying spray of glass. She laughed with surprised delight, and Jack grinned. Natural shot, he said approvingly. Try the next one. They worked until dark, and by the end, Clara could hit 3 out of 5 targets reliably. Her shoulder ached from the rifle's kick, but she felt competent, capable. She could protect herself if needed. That night, lying in Anna Donovan's bed under Anna's quilt, Clara stared at the ceiling and wondered about the woman who had lived in this house, who had loved Jack and died too young. She wondered if Jack still grieved deeply, or if time had gentled the pain. Then she wondered why she was wondering about such things when she had no business being interested in Jack Donovan, beyond neighborly friendship. But as she drifted towards sleep, it was his storm cloud eyes she saw, his rare smile she remembered. Morning came early at the Double J Ranch. Clara woke to the sound of roosters and men's voices, the smell of coffee and frying bacon. She dressed quickly and found the kitchen already bustling, Rosa at the stove, the men eating quickly before the day's work began. Jack looked up when she entered, his hair still damp from washing, and something in his expression made her heart skip before she firmly told herself to stop being foolish. After breakfast, they loaded supplies into 2 wagons. Jack, Miguel, and Tommy would accompany Clara to her claim and help her set up a proper camp and begin work on her cabin. Rosa packed food enough for several days, insisting Clara could not work on an empty stomach. The ride to Clara's land took about an hour, following Granite Creek upstream into increasingly rugged country. When they reached the boundary of her section, Jack called a halt, and Clara climbed down from her wagon to stand on her own land for the first time. It was perfect. Rocky, yes, and wild, but achingly beautiful. The creek ran clear and cold, lined with willows and cottonwoods. Pines covered the rising slopes, and a meadow opened up near the water, grass already greening with spring growth. In the distance, mountains rose against an impossibly blue sky. "This is mine," Clara whispered and felt tears sting her eyes. "This is really mine." Jack came to stand beside her, understanding in his face. "It is a good piece of land, hard but good." "You chose well." They spent the morning scouting the perfect location for the cabin, a spot on a slight rise that would stay dry during spring runoff, but was close enough to the creek for easy water access. Jack and Miguel debated approaches, tested the ground, finally agreeing on the exact placement. Tommy started clearing brush with almost frightening energy, and Clara joined him, ignoring her blisters, determined to contribute. By afternoon, Jack had taught her how to set up a proper camp with her newly purchased tent, how to dig a fire pit and surround it with stones for safety, how to hang food to keep it away from animals. Miguel rode out with her to scout timber for the cabin, showing her which trees to mark for cutting, explaining how many logs they would need. Over the next 4 days, Clara learned more than she had thought possible. The men worked with impressive efficiency, felling trees, stripping bark, notching logs. Jack showed Clara how to chink the gaps between logs with mud and grass, how to frame a door and window. Tommy taught her a bawdy song about a cowboy and his horse that made Miguel roll his eyes and Clara laugh until she ached. They worked from sunrise to sunset, and Clara worked alongside them, her hands blistering and her muscles screaming, but her spirits soaring. In the evenings, they sat around the campfire, eating Rosa's food and talking. Clara learned that Miguel and Rosa had 4 children, all working on nearby ranches. Tommy was the youngest of 7 brothers and deeply homesick for his mother in Texas. Jack shared stories of his early struggles, the mistakes he had made, the lessons learned through hard experience. He had built his ranch from nothing, just like Clara was doing now, and she felt a kinship with him that went beyond attraction, though that attraction was definitely present, growing stronger each day despite her intentions. She caught him watching her sometimes, his expression unguarded, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. But he never acted on it, never crossed the line from friendly to forward, and she was grateful. She needed to prove to herself that she could do this alone, before she could even consider complicating her life with a man. On the 4th evening, with the cabin walls rising and the roof frame in place, Jack announced they would need to return to the Double J the next day. "We have our own work that cannot wait much longer," he said apologetically. "But you have a good start here. The roof should go on quickly, and then it is just finishing work." "You have already done so much," Clara said, inadequate words for the gratitude she felt. "I can manage the rest. Thank you, all of you, truly." "I will ride over in a few days, check on your progress," Jack said. "And you are welcome at the ranch any time for any reason, if you need help, if you get lonely, if you run out of coffee." He smiled. "Do not be too proud to ask, Clara. Out here, isolation can be dangerous." "I will remember," Clara promised. That night, she lay in her tent listening to the creek and the wind in the pines, and felt utterly alone for the first time since arriving in Arizona. The men would leave tomorrow, and then it would be just her and Scout and the land. The enormity of what she had undertaken settled over her like a physical weight. Could she really do this? Was she strong enough, smart enough, stubborn enough? Yes, she thought fiercely, she had to be. The men left at dawn, Jack lingering a moment longer than the others. "You will be all right?" He asked, his eyes searching hers. "I will be fine," Clara said, willing it to be true. "I know you will." He touched her shoulder briefly, a gesture of reassurance and something more. "See you soon, Clara Whitmore." She watched them ride away until they disappeared from view, then turned to face her unfinished cabin and the endless work ahead. Scout pressed against her leg and Clara scratched the dog's ears. "Well, girl," she said, "it is just us now. Let us get to work." The next 2 weeks tested Clara in ways she had not imagined. She worked until her hands bled, until exhaustion made her clumsy, until she fell into her bedroll each night too tired to eat. She learned through painful trial and error, ruining as many shingles as she successfully nailed, hitting her thumb with the hammer so often it turned purple. But slowly, impossibly, the cabin took shape. She finished the roof, hung the door, installed the window. She mixed mortar and built a fireplace, following instructions from a book she had brought from Philadelphia, rebuilding it twice before she got it right. She learned the rhythms of her land, where the deer came to drink at dawn, where the hawks nested in the tall pines. She planted a garden in the cleared meadow, tenderly pressing seeds into the rocky soil and praying they would grow. She built a chicken coop and a small shelter for Juniper and the cow, whom she had named Marigold. Every day brought new challenges, new problems to solve, and every solution she found herself made her stronger, more confident. But she was lonely. She talked to Scout and the other animals, sang to herself while she worked, but the silence pressed in during the long evenings. She found herself watching the trail that led to Jack's ranch, hoping to see a rider, and hated herself for that weakness. 3 weeks after the men had left, Jack returned. Clara was on her cabin roof, fitting the last shingles when Scout's barking announced a visitor. She looked up, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, and saw him riding up the trail on Sam. Her heart leaped absurdly, and she told herself it was just because she was glad to see another human being, not because it was him specifically. Jack dismounted and stared at the cabin, his expression stunned. "Clara, you finished it?" "I did," she said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "Want to see inside." The interior was simple but functional. She had made a bed frame from saplings, filled a mattress tick with grass and pine needles. Her stove was installed, her few dishes arranged on shelves. The floor was dirt, but she had plans to lay boards eventually. It was rough and plain, but it was hers, built with her own hands. "This is incredible," Jack said, walking around slowly, taking in every detail. "Clara, I am honestly amazed. I did not think you would get this far so fast." "You thought I would give up," Clara said, hurt despite herself. "No," Jack turned to face her, his expression serious. "I knew you would not give up. But I thought you might accept more help, realize you did not have to do everything alone." "I did do it alone," Clara said, "and I needed to. Can you understand that?" "I can," Jack said quietly. "Better than you might think. When I started the ranch, I refused help too, determined to prove I could do it myself. It took me a long time to learn that accepting help is not the same as admitting weakness." He paused. "But you have proven your point, Clara. You can do this. Now, can we be friends?" "Real friends, the kind who help each other without keeping score." Clara looked at him, at his honest face and kind eyes, and felt something shift in her chest. "Yes," she said, "I would like that." Jack's smile lit up the dim cabin. "Good. Then, as your friend, I am going to insist you come to dinner at the ranch this Sunday. Rosa has been asking about you constantly, and if I show up without you again, she will have my hide. This Sunday." Clara had lost track of days, marking time by tasks completed rather than calendar dates. "It is Thursday now, so 3 days away. Please say yes. You deserve a break, a good meal, some company." Clara thought about her dwindling supplies, her exhaustion, her bone-deep loneliness. "Yes," she said, "I would like that very much." "Excellent. I will come fetch you Sunday morning and we can make a day of it." Jack moved toward the door, then turned back. "You should be proud, Clara. What you have accomplished here is remarkable." After he left, Clara sat on her bed and let herself admit the truth. She was glad to see him not just because he was company, but because he was Jack. Because his presence made her feel warm and safe, and seen in a way she had not felt since her mother died. Because when he smiled at her, she wanted to smile back, wanted to move closer, wanted things she had sworn she did not want. This was dangerous. She had worked too hard for her independence to risk it now for a man, even one as good as Jack seemed to be. But as she prepared for bed that night, she could not stop thinking about Sunday, could not stop the flutter of anticipation in her stomach. Sunday dawned clear and warm, summer settling over the high country. Clara washed as best she could in the cold creek, put on her least worn dress, and even attempted to tame her sun-streaked hair into something resembling order. When Jack arrived mid-morning, his eyes widened appreciatively. "You look lovely," he said, and Clara blushed like a schoolgirl. "Thank you, you look quite presentable yourself." He did. He wore clean clothes and had clearly made an effort, his hair still damp, his jaw freshly shaved. He helped her into the wagon with courtly grace, and they set off toward the Double J, the morning bright with possibility. Rosa greeted them with exclamations and hugs, dragging Clara inside to show off her kitchen and the meal she had prepared. Miguel and Tommy were there, along with two other ranch hands Clara had not met. Everyone welcomed her warmly, asking about her progress, praising her accomplishments. The meal was festive and delicious, laughter flowing as freely as the coffee. After dinner, Jack suggested showing Clara the ranch properly. They walked together in the afternoon heat, Jack pointing out his breeding stock, his irrigation system, his plans for expansion. He spoke with passion about his work, his vision for the future, and Clara found herself caught up in his enthusiasm, offering suggestions, asking questions. They ended up by a small pond, sitting in the shade of a massive cottonwood, watching dragonflies skim the water's surface. The moment felt suspended, perfect, fragile. "I need to tell you something," Jack said abruptly, staring at his hands, "and I need you to let me finish before you respond." Clara's heart started to pound. "All right. When you walked into that land office, something happened to me. I did not understand it at first. You were so fierce, so determined, so utterly yourself. I told myself I was just being neighborly, just helping out, but these past weeks I have not been able to stop thinking about you." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "I know what we agreed. I know you came here for land, not a husband. I know you want independence, not entanglement. But I need you to know that I have feelings for you, Clara, strong feelings. And if there is any chance you might feel the same, I would like to court you properly. If not, I swear I will never mention it again and we will stay friends, just as you want." Clara's mind spun. Part of her wanted to refuse immediately to protect her hard-won freedom. But another part, growing stronger by the moment, whispered that Jack was not like other men. He had seen her at her worst, covered in dirt and sweat, and still looked at her like she was precious. He had helped without demanding, respected her without diminishing her, supported her dreams instead of trying to reshape them. "I have been so determined not to need anyone," she said slowly. "My whole life, men have tried to control me, to make my choices for me. My father, my uncle, even kind men who thought they knew better than I did what would make me happy. I came here to escape that, to be my own person." "I know," Jack said, "and I would never try to take that from you. Your land is yours, Clara. Your choices are yours. I am not asking you to give up anything. I am asking if maybe, possibly, you could add something. Add me, add us." "What are you offering?" Clara asked bluntly. "What does courtship mean to you?" "It means getting to know each other better. Spending time together. Seeing if what I feel, what I hope you might feel, could grow into something lasting. And if it does, if we both want it, then marriage. But not a marriage where you lose yourself. A partnership, Clara. You keep your land, I keep mine. We build both together." We make decisions together. We respect each other as equals." "I have never heard of a marriage like that," Clara said, her voice barely a whisper. "Then maybe we create something new," Jack said. "Something better than what our parents had, what society expects." "Why not, Clara? We are already breaking all the rules out here. Why not break a few more?" Clara looked at him, this unexpected man who saw her clearly and valued what he saw. She thought about the loneliness of the past weeks, the joy she had felt when he arrived, the way his presence made everything brighter. She thought about her mother, who had loved her father but lost herself in that love, and wondered if it had to be that way. What if love could be different? What if partnership could be real? "I told you I wanted land more than a husband," she said softly. Jack nodded, his face carefully neutral though she could see tension in his shoulders. Clara smiled, the decision crystallizing in her heart. "So tell me, Jack Donovan, why not have both with you here?" His expression transformed, hope and joy blazing across his features. "Are you saying yes to courting?" "I am saying yes to trying," Clara amended. "I cannot promise where it will lead, but I am willing to see if this could work, if we could work." "That is all I am asking," Jack said. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers, and Clara felt the rightness of it in her bones. "We will go slow at your pace. No pressure, no expectations beyond honesty and respect." "Agreed." "Agreed," Clara said, and let him pull her closer until she was leaning against his shoulder, his arm around her waist, both of them watching the dragonflies dance. Courting Jack was unlike anything Clara had experienced. He rode over twice a week, never empty-handed, always bringing something useful. Nails she had run short of, seed for her garden, a book he thought she might enjoy. He helped with heavy work without being asked, but never took over, always following her lead. They talked for hours, discovering shared passions for literature and music, debating politics and philosophy, laughing over silly jokes and childhood stories. He kissed her for the first time on a July evening, with sunset painting the sky impossible colors. They had been working together to build a proper barn for her animals, and Clara had just hammered the last nail into a beam. She turned triumphant to find Jack watching her with such tenderness that her breath caught. He stepped closer, giving her time to move away, but she stayed still, her heart racing. When his lips met hers, soft and questioning, she kissed him back, and it felt like coming home. Summer turned to autumn, the aspens blazing gold against the evergreens. Clara's garden produced bountifully, her animals thrived, her land began to feel truly like a homestead. Jack was a constant presence, his ranch close enough for easy visits, far enough to maintain their separate lives. They danced together at a community gathering in Prescott, causing a minor scandal that neither of them cared about. They rode into the mountains to watch the elk rut, packed picnics by the creek, lay in the meadow counting stars. In October, Jack asked her to marry him. They were at his ranch, sitting on his porch after dinner, and he produced a simple gold band that had been his grandmother's. "I love you, Clara," he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "I love your strength and your stubbornness and your laughter. I love watching you work, the way you face every challenge like it is a puzzle to solve rather than an obstacle to fear. I love who I am when I am with you. Will you marry me?" "Not because you need me, but because you want me." Clara took the ring, turning it in the lamplight. She thought about the woman she had been 6 months ago, armored and alone, so afraid of losing herself that she had been unwilling to risk connection. She thought about the woman she was now, still strong, still independent, but learning that vulnerability was not weakness, that needing someone did not mean losing yourself. "Yes," she said clearly. "I will marry you, Jack, because I love you, and because I trust you, and because I want to build a life with you." They married in November, in a simple ceremony at a small church in Prescott. Rosa cried, Miguel beamed, Tommy cheered loudly enough to scandalize the minister. Clara wore a dress she had sewn herself from blue fabric Jack had given her, the color of his eyes. Jack wore his best suit, looking so handsome that Clara's heart stuttered. But the most important moment came after the ceremony, when they stood before the land office clerk, Howard, who looked at them with wry amusement. "What can I do for you newlyweds?" "We need to file an addition to Miss Whitmore's homestead claim," Jack said. "It should now read Mrs. Clara Donovan, but the land remains solely hers, separate from any marital property. We also need to draw up papers making that separation explicit under territorial law." Howard's eyebrows rose. "That is highly unusual." "So are we," Clara said firmly. "Can you do it?" "I can," Howard said slowly. "It will require a lawyer to draft the property agreements, but yes, it can be done." They spent their wedding night at Clara's cabin, not the Double J, because Clara wanted to wake up on her wedding morning on her own land. They lay together in the darkness, the warmth of their joining still glowing between them, and Clara felt wholly herself, wholly loved, wholly free. "Thank you," she whispered against Jack's chest. "For what?" "For understanding what I needed, for not asking me to be less than I am." Jack kissed her forehead. "Thank you for letting me be part of your dream instead of trying to replace it with mine." Over the next 4 years, they built something extraordinary. Clara proved up her homestead, meeting every requirement, and received her land patent in the spring of 1887. She and Jack ran their properties as separate enterprises that supported each other, sharing labor during busy seasons, keeping finances distinct but working toward common goals. Clara became known throughout the territory as a skilled horsewoman and a savvy negotiator, selling produce from her large garden and raising sheep whose wool was prized for quality. Jack's cattle ranch prospered, his herds growing, his reputation solid. They divided their time between both properties, maintaining Clara's cabin and building an addition to Jack's ranch house. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, dealt with rustlers and predators, celebrated good years and survived bad ones. They argued sometimes, passionate debates that ended in laughter or compromise, never in dominance or submission. In the summer of 1888, Clara discovered she was pregnant. The joy was complicated by fear, remembering what had happened to Anna. But Jack held her through the terror, and together they made it through. Their son was born in February 1889, a squalling, healthy boy they named Samuel, after Jack's father. Sam was followed 2 years later by a daughter, Rose, and 3 years after that by another boy, David. The children grew up wild and free, learning to ride before they could write, comfortable on both properties, raised to understand that love did not mean possession, that family was about respect as much as affection. Clara taught them to read and cipher. Jack taught them ranching, and together they taught them to value independence and partnership equally. On a golden autumn day in 1895, Clara stood in her meadow, now expanded and flourishing, and looked at what she had built. Her homestead was thriving, her children were healthy, her marriage was strong. Jack came up beside her, his arms slipping around her waist in the familiar gesture she still loved. "Thinking deep thoughts?" he asked. "Just remembering the woman I was when I arrived here," Clara said, "so determined to need no one. And now I know the truth. I do not need you to survive. I could manage alone if I had to, but I do not want to. Choosing you, choosing us, that was the best decision I ever made. Second only to claiming this land in the first place." Jack laughed, the sound rich and warm. "I will take second place to 160 acres of rocks and rattlesnakes." Clara turned in his arms, smiling up at him. "You told me I could have both, land and love, independence and partnership. You were right." "We were right," Jack corrected. "We figured it out together." In the distance, their children's laughter rang out. Sam teaching Rose how to throw a lasso while David toddled after them, Scout, now graying around the muzzle, watching over them all. The mountains stood eternal against the endless sky, the creek sang its constant song, and Clara Donovan, landowner, wife, mother, felt the deep satisfaction of a life built on her own terms. Years later, when Clara was old and her grandchildren begged for stories, she would tell them about coming west with nothing but determination and hope. She would tell them about a cowboy who helped without demanding, who offered partnership instead of possession. She would tell them about proving up her land, about building a cabin with bleeding hands, about learning that true strength meant knowing when to stand alone and when to stand together. "The land taught me I could survive," she would say, her hand in Jack's, their fingers still intertwined after decades. "But your grandfather taught me I could thrive." And when those grandchildren grew up, some would homestead their own land, and some would marry for love, and some would do both, carrying forward the lesson Clara and Jack had lived. That the best life was one you chose freely, built with your own hands and shared with someone who honored the person you were while helping you become who you wanted to be. The homestead and the ranch both remained in the family for generations, testaments to what could be built when two people respected each other enough to forge a new path. And if you visit that part of Arizona even now, they say you can still feel the strength of it, the legacy of a woman who wanted land more than a husband and a cowboy who asked, "Why not have both with me here?"